गुरुर्ब्रह्मा गुरुर्विष्णु गुरुर्देवो महेश्वरः गुरु साक्षात् परब्रह्मा गुरु साक्षात् परब्रह्मा तस्मै श्री गुरवे नमः.
See, they are on your study, Saint Augustine and Saint Thomas Aquinas. You will get questions on both of them in your paper. Then you have Kant and Hegel. You cannot go to Kant unless you know what has happened in between. They are in the universities. Immediately, we don't teach mostly saints. This period, above about 1800 to 2000 years, we don't teach. From Aristotle, we go straight to Descartes. As I told you yesterday, is father of modern philosophy. Three philosophers, Descartes, Spinoza, Leibniz, and Locke, Berkeley, Hume. Six philosophers, three empiricists, three rationalists. Who is an empiricist? Who is a rationalist? I will tell you everything. We teach and then we go to Kant. Kant, you don't know who he is. When students of philosophy hear his name, a shiver goes down their spine. He is that philosopher, Kant. So you cannot appreciate Kant unless you know what has happened in between. And there was a great controversy. So this survey is being given to you. Descartes is called the father of modern philosophy, as I told you yesterday, because he thought he gave a foolproof methodology of doing philosophy. Cogito ergo sum, as you heard yesterday, I doubt, therefore I exist. This is what he wrote down. And there are great disputes also in philosophy with which you have nothing to do. How far it is valid, we will not have a look at it. For us it is enough if we know this is what he gave, cogito ergo sum. I doubt, therefore I exist, because in the very fact of doubting my existence cannot be denied. Then also, the chief contributions I will tell you in a very great nutshell. The other is the mind-body relationship he tried to solve. Mind is mental level, intangible, ethereal, not space occupying. These are the attributes of mind. Matter is heavy, dross, space occupying. The two are qualitatively different and opposed also in a way. How there is so much of union and agreement between the two? They are qualitatively different. To be quantitatively different is something. You add up the quantity and the difference is there. You take away and the difference is annihilated. But if you are qualitatively different, it is very difficult to bring about an agreement, a union, a harmony. He gave a theory known as interactionism. When two straight lines cross each other in a cross form, they cut each other at one point, and that one point is the meeting point. If you meet at any point, it is all right, it is not good at meeting all the time, at all the places. He gave a theory of interactionism, and quite interesting one, which has now been supplanted. He says mind and body interact in what he called the pineal gland, which he put at the back of the neck. Doctors now put it somewhere in the abdomen. Anyway, we are not concerned with that, we must have a look at it. There is interaction, and so mind and body get related this way, and that is the relationship established between the two. These are two principal contributions. Another contribution also he has made very mighty. He has proffered a proof for the existence of God. How do you prove the existence of God? Aquinas also says, you cannot prove the existence of God, but from the effect you can prove the cause. What is known in philosophy as the ontological proof for the existence of God was given by Descartes. Very simple and very small, I will tell you. You understand, that's all. Just keep in mind. He says, when I look within myself, this is a major way of doing philosophy, introspection as it is called technically. When I look within myself, I find I am very imperfect, I am very deficient, I am so much lacking everywhere. As against it, I have an idea of a perfect being, some being who is perfect, who is fulfilled, who is complete in all respects, perfect. If a thing is perfect, it lacks nothing. Perfection means this thing, it lacks nothing. God alone is perfect. I have an idea of perfection. Existence is proved in the very fact of its being perfect. That is the idea of God which I have, and which is also known as the ontological proof for the existence of God. This is what he did. Then, after Descartes, we go to Spinoza, or Spinoza also, Spinoza. If you happen to read the life of Spinoza, very inspiring, very noble life. Baruch Benedict Spinoza, that was his full name. Baruch means blessed, Benedict means blessed. He was twice blessed in name, he was thrice cursed in life. It was a very tragic life. He was invited by the Duke of Weimar to adorn the chair of philosophy in the university there. He apologized, saying, philosophy is that rich, no one on earth can either purchase it or no one on earth can ever sell it. Like nature, it has to be bountiful, generous, magnanimous, and it can be given only free. I never intended to be prosperous in life. Thank you very much for your kind offer. He philosophized and earned his living by polishing lenses. Specs you wear, they need brushing, and when they are brushed on the machine, they emit a dust which he inhaled and died of tuberculosis. Spinoza. He was the son of a Jew, a middle-placed businessman, quite prosperous. He was given to philosophizing right from the beginning. His sister thought he is a fool and he can be easily cheated. So when her father died, she grabbed the entire property and thought things would end there, but things did not. Spinoza went to the court, fought the case, won it, and then in the court itself, he told his sister, dear sister, it is apparent you need the property more than I do, you have it. He was that philosopher. Philosophers are a class by themselves, you must know it. and you can know it only first and when you read their lives. Spinoza has also been dealt with unjustly in philosophy. Some call him an atheist. An atheist is one who does not believe in any God. A non-believer in God is an atheist. Others call him God-intoxicated philosopher. He is intoxicated of God. He is full of God. There is no dearth of God in him. These two diametrically opposed views are put on Spinoza's worth and value. Anyway, to us he appears to be God-centric, God-intoxicated. He says, in our limited knowledge, due to paucity of knowledge with us, because all knowledge is with God only, not with human beings, we get to know only two aspects of God, matter and mind. There are countless aspects of God, attributes of God, as the word he uses, attribute of thought and attribute of extension. The same thing, matter and mind. Thought is mind, attribute of extension is matter. Extension means which occupies space. You should be very well up with the meanings of words in philosophy, that is necessary. Attribute of thought and extension. Otherwise, there are countless attributes of God. Endless, you can never have a count of them. This is his philosophy. How does he explain the intimate relationship between matter and mind, as Descartes did by interactionism? As against Descartes' view, he puts his theory of parallelism. Parallel lines, parallel lines are those which run parallel to each other, never meet, but they run all the same parallel to each other. He says they are both, thought and extension, both are dependent and run parallel on God. They are both dependent upon God, and therefore there is great harmony between the two, matter and mind. That theory is known as parallelism, which he advocates. After Spinoza, we study Leibniz, Leibniz, Leibniz. He gave the philosophy of monadology, monad. Materialists advocate the tiniest unit of matter to be atom, tiniest unit of matter. He advocates a spiritual advocacy. He says monad is the unit, and monad is a spiritually live unit. Very interesting philosophy. He talks of pre-established harmony. These monads, these units, these basics, they are windowless. He uses this word, windowless monads. There is no interaction between one monad and another. See, there is no interaction between one monad and another, and there is perfect harmony system in the creation, in universe. How is it possible? Windowless monads are spiritual units. He says there is a law of pre-established harmony. Pre-established, you know the meaning of the word harmony. A system of agreement has already been evolved, and that is his philosophy, monadology. Then Locke, Berkeley, Hume, these are three empirist philosophers. Empirist means those who advocate the primacy of experience. Experience is of senses. Senses are five, you should be knowing: eyes, ears, nose, mouth, touch. Whatever we get from these senses is called experience, and that is an empiricist who goes by it. Locke is a empiricist. He is a British philosopher. Locke, Locke. He says, matter is to us both unknown and unknowable. The basic issue is, how do we get knowledge? Some philosophers came and said we get knowledge through the agency of the mind only. The senses are blind and dumb both. Others say there is nothing in the mind which is not first in the senses. Meaning, senses are all important. Senses are the evidence of matter. That is the issue. These first three, Descartes, Spinoza, Leibniz, they are rationalists. They go by the agency of the mind. All knowledge is possible through the agency of the mind only. Plato is the greatest advocate, is the greatest rationalist. He goes to the extent of asserting you get everything from within only, you know everything from within only, you learn nothing from outside. This is what Plato asserts. From the agency of the mind you get everything, you know all things. Then what is the role of matter? There is no matter outside. The empirists say, if there is no matter outside, how do you get these vibrations? See, how is the process of law, knowledge? How do we get knowledge is a very simple question. I see the tree in front of me. You may ask me, how do you know there is a tree outside you? I say, I see it, isn't it? You ask me, what do you mean by seeing? And you are flabbergasted and say, seeing means you have no answer with you. When you say seeing means seeing, it means you have no answer with you. The process of seeing is, there are vibrations emitted from the tree, which strike the eye, the appropriate organ to it. This message is carried on to the mind. There is an organ known as the brain within you. The function of this organ is what we call mind. There are areas earmarked for every sense in the mind. This is for eye, this is for ear, this is for smell, this is for taste, this is for touch. Areas earmarked in the brain. This is a matter concerning with sight. There will be a vibration, a disturbance in the area pertaining to eye. The mind will wake up. Mind, which is the function. It will wake up and ask, what is this? What is this disturbance? What is this turmoil? And it will say, oh, it is a tree. Now see, what do I get within me? The tree is outside. It cannot go into my head. It cannot be there. I get only an image of the tree within me. I don't have the tree within me. I only get an image, a photograph of the tree. I know the photograph only, not the tree. You have seen it. If you don't know the tree, how do you say the tree is true? The image which you got within yourself is true. How do you know it? If I ask you, is it the same person? If you have seen him before, you can say he is or he is not. But if you have not seen him at all before, how can you say he is the same person or he is not the same person? You don't get first-hand awareness of the object you see. It is second-hand awareness only. This is the process of knowledge which all philosophers agree with today. These vibrations, are interpreted. Some philosophers say there are no vibrations and there is no matter. How do you know there is matter? How do you know there is a table? Philosopher said, strike your head against the wall and see whether the wall exists or not. Strike your head against the wall and see whether the wall exists or not. What does it mean? There will be pain in my head. What is pain? Pain is sensation. Pain is not the presence of matter. How do you know there is a wall? You have struck your head against it. There is hurt, there is injury, there is pain. What is pain, hurt, injury? It is a sensation, it is a feeling with you. So where is mind? It is only sensation, feeling with you. There is no mind. This is what Locke, Berkeley and Hume prove. Locke says, matter is to us both unknown and unknowable. You must know the English language. Unknown. We do not know what matter is. Unknowable. It is not capable of being known. You cannot know it either. And then there are, details. If you study the whole of the philosopher, then things become clear. For our purpose, just a passing acquaintance is enough. There are no innate ideas, inborn ideas. All knowledge is received from outside. The philosophers on the other side assert this way. Berkeley has a very interesting, the same which I told you just now. He is a bishop. He cannot accept the independent existence of matter against God. God is mind for him. God is akin to mind, God is not akin to matter. Isse est percipi. Isse est percipi. You will not be able to write it. You don't know the spelling and don't write it. To exist is to be perceived. It means to exist is to be perceived. How do you know this table exists here? You say, I see it. You go away outside, others see it. All go away outside, then who sees it? God sees it. This is his philosophy. Esse est percipi. To exist is to be perceived. This is sensation only which you know. There is no matter. And as against him came later on David Hume. Locke, Berkeley, Hume, as I said. Hume is an skeptic. He believes in nothing. He accepts nothing. He says, he asks, where is mind? You talk of a permanent entity known as mind. Where is mind? He says, when I look within myself, introspection, I come across certain feelings. I am hungry, I am thirsty, I am angry, I am this, I am that. Where is mind? I don't come across mind. It is an stream flowing of sensations and feelings, coming and going. Where is mind? There is no mind. There is no permanence. Mind means permanence. You go out, take a house on rent, promise to pay rent at the end of every month. After the month when the landlord comes for rent, you say, which rent? He says, you took the house on rent 1 month ago, rent is due. Somebody else may have taken away. I am not that man. 1 month ago was another man, not this man. You go to that man and recover the rent from there. Skepticism means this thing. Nothing is stable, nothing is permanent, everything is flux, as you saw in Heraclitus. And see the funniest part of the whole thing. Hume was very popular with women. With females he was very popular. Every evening he would go to a particular restaurant for his coffee session, gossiping with his friends and all these things. women from adjoining chairs would pull up their chairs to his table. In England, this is considered to be great discourtesy. You cannot pull your chair on another's table if it is occupied. They were so fond of him that he would pull up their chairs to his table and be in company with Hume, David Hume. He was in Scott. Hume himself writes, there is no sanction for believing or expecting that in the evening my female friends would meet me there and I will have a nice time. But still I know it will happen and I will go in the evening there and have a nice time. Things may be happening ordinarily, but it is very, very difficult, almost impossible to prove them. Causation. The law of causation is the paramount thing with you. Those who talk of permanence, they talk of the law of causation. Cause and effect follow each other. Where is causation? There is the matchbox in my hand. I pull out a stick, rub it against the sides, and there is a flame. Where is the law of causation? I see the flame, I see the stick, I see the box, I don't see the law of causation. Where is the law of causation? But it doesn't mean he disproved the law of causation. He simply asserted it is difficult, it is impossible to prove the law of causation, though our life would not be possible without the law of causation. That is Hume. You saw rationalists, Descartes, Spinoza, Leibniz. You saw empiricists also, Locke, Berkeley, Hume. The one set of philosophers, the rationalists, demolished mind, the empiricists demolished matter. There are only two things left in philosophy, mind and matter. And both are annihilated. That is why one set of philosophers cancelled mind, another set cancelled matter. It used to be jocular said, never mind, no matter. Never mind, no matter means both are cancelled, mind and matter both stand cancelled. What has philosophy to do? In this situation, this earthquake-like situation, appeared Immanuel Kant. Immanuel Kant is a German philosopher, and before I tell you about his philosophy, be warned that the popular saying is, he who says he understands Kant's philosophy thoroughly is either a fool himself or trying to befool the hearer. This is the remark given for Kant's philosophy. I told you his name sends a thrill in any philosophy student's head. He was the man with whom people set their watches. He was that man. How do you set your watch? By the beep on the TV or radio or public hooter or whatever it may be. People set their watches by him. How can you set your watch by a man? Every evening at 3:30 in the afternoon, he would leave his home for his evening walk. And the good burghers of Königsberg knew it was 3:30 in the afternoon and set their watches. Not for 1 year, for years together, for decades together. He lived up to a ripe age of 80 years. That was Immanuel Kant. We will have a look at his philosophy tomorrow.